Hey everybody. Unfortunately, we had some technical problems with my cameras for the latest episode of Geek Shop, so this is as animated as I'm going to be throughout the entire episode. But fortunately, we had a great guest that really made an amazing episode. So let's take a walk to the Geek Shop.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Geek Shop. I'm Chetan and Chris.
Hello.
And we have a special guest today with us. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Emil Koepcke from South Carolina.
Welcome to Geek Shop.
It's great to be here.
So, Chris, actually, before we start, Emil, tell us what you do.
Well, I create comic books. I have my comics here. I'm up to issue 6 finished, and it's a sci-fi story. A lot of things going on. It's kind of ADHD, I suppose.
Yeah, I feel like that's all of us.
Yes, yeah. I've got so much I want to get out, and then it's like,
Exactly, and then you suddenly run out of energy, and you have nothing to give out, and then suddenly a lot, nothing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the problem where you run into is, like our artist block video, you have so many ideas, but when you look at the blank sheet of paper, nothing goes down.
That's the worst. That's starting. Once you get started, it can flow, but staring at the white page.
So I guess we could start off actually the first question, like, what do you do to get over that white page? Like, do you have a trick or anything like that?
I do not have any trick. That's one of the hardest things to do is find inspiration and motivation.
Okay. I personally find solace in my boxes. So I do my boxes sort of like, it's just like the idea of like putting a pen down to paper, putting my borders in, and particularly when I'm inking, it's like that's the first thing I do. And it's like, okay, it's like I'm putting ink down, and then after that, it just kind of flows. You know, it's like that first the first mile towards the marathon.
There you go. Yeah. I guess that's the first thing I do too. I have a template that I use to, it's 10 by 15. So I put that down, trace it out, and
see, you're like us. You're a traditional old school.
Yeah.
So you do work with the ink and on paper, not digital, correct?
Yeah. Well, it's a mix of both. Like issue 2 and issue 3 of Sinthetic, I actually inked in Illustrator, and I wish I hadn't done that because it just looks so lifeless. So.
And is that, and so but currently the current issues you're doing, I saw some stuff on your Instagram. It's all pencil and ink and everything like that.
Yeah. I like to feel the pen scratching on the paper.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. That's
it's one of those odd pleasures.
And
it is.
And drawing on, I remember watching a video by Frank Quietly, and he was talking about drawing on a sheet of glass, which is what a tablet is, and you don't get that effect and that feel.
Right, exactly. Yeah, on my computer, I have a Wacom tablet. And, I haven't advanced much since 2012, but it gets the job done. But that just plastic on plastic. It's
and the effects with the tools, no matter how you tweak it. I've tweaked my online brushes so much, you still don't get that effect of raw, randomness of a brush or a pen or a marker.
Exactly. I think that's the key right there, the randomness, the pressure and,
So mentioning that,
so as far as,
sorry, go for it, Chris.
I was going to say, as far as like what tools do you use?
I was about to ask that question also. Same question.
Yeah. So is it brush pen? What are you using?
I pretty much use whatever's closest to me, but I do like these pintail brushes.
Yeah.
The blue one is my favorite. It's a little bit stiffer, but you can still get like a good variety of line width. with one stroke.
So sorry,
The black,
blue ink.
it's not blue ink, the actual color of the pen.
Oh,
Because they
okay.
come in like in pairs of two. One is black and one is blue.
Oh, I never noticed that. Okay.
Yeah. But the blue
very
one's
cool.
my favorite.
And is it almost exclusively brush, or are you using any like fine liners or anything?
Oh, yeah. I have a variety of micron pens. Actually, what I'm on the search for is a good, reliable white ink pen. This one
Oh my God.
This one seems to be pretty good.
Yeah.
This one, like, I don't know, it dried up. It doesn't do anything. I used to use just white ink and a brush, but what's the way to say? It's unreliable. It's inconsistent. So
Yeah. I too I've been on the search, and I use liquid paper pens a little bit, and then just sort of I end up putting a glob somewhere and then getting a brush and sort of brushing it on, and that ends up being most of my correction. But I tried to buy gel pens. I bought like 5 different brands of gel pens to try and get a nice white, so I could get a thin white line. And they never sort of come out white enough. It's always like this like clear liquid that comes out with maybe a hint of white in it.
yeah. Well, this one's pretty good. I can't read the brand on it.
See, I'm surprised.
I think I got this at Walmart, actually.
I'm surprised. Like, I thought now with, kids and stuff and gel pens and all that, white ink pens would be around like crazy everywhere now.
You would think.
Yeah, you would think. I can get any color fluorescence and pastel color.
That's what I mean. Yeah, you see
but a
all
good
the
white
yeah.
you can't get. But a good white you can't find.
I find sometimes when you mentioned Walmart, I found here in Canada, even the dollar stores have some decent decent pens.
Yeah. Yep.
You don't need the
we're
high
living
end
in
stuff.
Yeah, we're living in an era where you don't need an art supply store necessarily. Certain things you do, but not all the time.
It's bad though.
So
As far
oh.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, go for it, Chris.
I was going to say, as far as I've seen a bit of your work colored. Do you do that digitally, or are you using other mediums?
That's all digital.
Okay.
Okay.
I do digital colors, and my lettering is digital. Just because my handwriting is terrible, and digital is just nice, neat, and that's what it needs to be readable.
So you're in our club after our last video on lettering, because we did a video on lettering comics, and Chris and I were saying, Chris, how many years has it been we're doing comics? Like so long, and we still don't know how to use an Ames guide.
Yeah.
And our lettering has not improved at all.
Not at all.
I think
so coloring. I actually do digital coloring as well, and so I totally get that, because it's one of those things. But do you ever experiment with other mediums besides ink?
For creating comic books?
Sure, or even I guess you could use it for doing a cover or a pinup, or even just I see you got lots of art behind you too, so it's like.
Oh
anything.
yeah, I paint. I do woodworking, a little bit of everything.
Cool. Has any of that ever made it into your comic books?
No.
See, when you posted your painting of your cat, I liked it because honestly, I'm terrible at painting. So when I see someone doing that and at least taking the initiative and trying, I liked your cat image.
Oh well, thank you. I appreciate that. That was actually the first time I ever worked with oil.
Oh, was it oil? Okay, so see,
painting.
that's how bad I am. I wasn't sure if it was acrylics or oils.
Yeah, well, normally I do acrylic, like that behind me. That's acrylic,
Okay.
and then that one's acrylic. That's an oil painting that I actually saved from going to the landfill, and it is old.
Oh, wow.
Like, I don't know why anybody would throw that away, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Seriously. But yeah, so it's interesting because I think that's another thing that we discovered is that as artists we sort of turn into art supply collectors to some degree, and sort of as much as you branch off, even when you're doing comic work, you tend to find every once in a while you see a little watercolor kit, and you're like, hey, I want to try that out, everything like that. So
I've actually thought about trying to do like a watercolor for the interior of the book, and mostly I keep it black and white just because the printing's cheaper. You know, I mean, you got to save every penny you can.
yeah,
And I remember,
sure.
I remember you posted something last year, or year before. I remember, and you mentioned something about how black and white art is so good, and and that's what made me do black and white for my new comic, for our new book. It's all black and white because I was thinking, let's go back to old school roots, and it was thank you. I was inspired by you talk about black and white art.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I've always just enjoyed black and white art. It's either there or it's not there.
Yeah. Yeah, I recently did a lecture, and I have put up some of my original artwork, and I color all my stuff digitally. And a few of the people saw my comic book and were like, "I like your comic and everything, but like just seeing the black and white art is just mind blowing." So I'm almost thinking I should release a black and white version when I get a few issues done, just a collection just in black and white because of that.
But
Yeah,
that's
you totally should.
But that's like all of us when we grew up reading comics, because all Marvel and DC comics were in color. When first time I saw original art, same situation. It's just like your eyes open up, going, "Wow, this is how they do it," and you get to appreciate the line work, and when you see the pencils up below it, like blue line pencils, it blows you away.
Right, right. You're able to see the actual like bones of the art.
That's
I guess
it.
the bone. But
And it makes you feel good because you see all the whiteout that like professionals use.
I
Like,
was going to
nothing's
say
better
that.
than seeing
Yes.
see
No.
whiteout on a Jack Kirby page, and you're like, "Oh God, he made mistakes too. Thank God."
I bought
hey,
a
yeah.
I bought one
Go
of
ahead.
those artist edition books, the smaller versions, the cheaper versions, and I was looking at there's a Kevin O'Neill book, and it's his League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I love his work, and looking for the book, I don't see whiteout at all, and I'm going, this guy's perfect. But then I bought a Joe Kubert one, and you see whiteout everywhere, and I'm like, this is what I want to see. Seeing like a legend, with whiteout, like Chris said about Jack Kirby, seeing like, whiteout on the pages. It's like, you know what? These guys are human also.
Yeah. Well, that's also the thing that brings life to art. When you see it in real life and you're like, it has a life feel to it. Whereas like digital art, it's always going to be perfect. Every line's going to be perfect. And
That's one thing I remember telling a friend of mine. The problem with digital art is, like I was saying, the random mistakes you make and stuff like that with analog art is sometimes you want to correct it, and sometimes you're just like, leave the mistake in. With digital, you could, undo so many times, unlimited amount of times.
well, that was one of the holdups I had in issue 2 and issue 3 because I was inking it digitally and I was just get it down, but then I was just tweaking and tweaking and tweaking.
And that's it. Yes, we're on a real.
Yeah, and I was like, well, this really isn't saving me any time. So.
And on real paper, you just say, you know what, screw it. I'm not even going to, white it out. I'm just going to continue the next panel.
Yeah, right.
Okay, Emil, question for you. Introduce your comic to us.
All right. Let's see. This is Sinthetic. It's a very sci-fi comic book. Part of it takes place in the modern age. Part of it takes place 500 years in the future. So, and it's about this guy. He gets infected with an alien virus and pretty much becomes invulnerable. But his weakness is he can't get cold, and there's a lot going on.
And one thing I liked about that issue, especially, is if you could hold up that issue again, and I have my copy, is your back cover.
Oh, yeah.
Each one of them had a sketch.
I did these.
And I love that.
I did this mostly like if I do like a convention or something, somebody wants like a little quick sketch. So
And
It's a
Chris,
gimmick
I warned
idea.
Emil a while back. I told him I'm going to steal his idea.
Hey,
Yeah.
you totally should. You totally should.
Nice.
No, that's a great idea.
So, as far as the story goes, like, is it something you've always had in your head? Is it something that, did something inspire you to make this story? Like, what was the origins of creating Synthetic?
The origins of creating Synthetic started back in high school. I wanted to be a comic book artist because I just fell in love with the medium. And I want to tell a story. I don't have a movie studio to make a movie, but I've got pencil and paper and a pen, so I could do it. And so anyway, I actually started this in high school, and I got about maybe probably 12 pages into the first issue, and I was like, this isn't the story I want to tell, because it was all about him in the lab and him breaking out of the lab. I was like, man, I want to see him like in the future setting. So I just skipped all that and jumped right to the action.
Nice. So you avoided the origin story and just went right into the action.
Yes. Yeah.
That's very cool.
That's kind of what this issue was all about, because you needed to fill in that gap, of the character.
No, but that was good that you did it in later issue instead of trying to explain everything in the first issue. And sometimes this is the thing like a lot of movies are getting into, where how many origin story, just jump into the action.
Right. When they came out with the latest, not the newest Spider-Man, but the first Tom Holland Spider-Man, I was like, please don't do an origin story. We know how.
And that's all of us. Yes, that's all of us.
And Batman's the same way. Superman's the same way. Don't do an origin story. These characters have been around for decades. Everybody knows them. Everybody knows how they began. It's redundant.
Yeah, the other thing,
yes.
The other thing too, that's as a creator, that's nice about that is if you kind of get into the action a little bit in your own book, sometimes your origin story might shift a little bit and adjust to sort of like, if you're a few issues in, you sort of like, oh, wait a minute, maybe this part of this origin doesn't necessarily have to be like that. Like, I find you can kind of tell a cleaner sort of origin story if you don't sort of have it at the beginning, because you know your character a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, my character is actually very undeveloped, I guess, at this point. He's just kind of a guy that was thrown into this situation. So.
No, but it works. No, yeah, I see. Reading your books, I think you do get a for a Jason character, you do get a development on it. I mean, I think you want to keep it vague also to keep it a mysterious character also. So you could play keep yourself open and have something to you could tweak it later if you need to.
Exactly. You don't want to box yourself into something. It's like once Superman was weakened by kryptonite, you can never take that back.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah, that's very true. So what's the future like? What do you see happening with Synthetic sort of down the road? Like in 10 years, where is this going to be if you're writing and drawing the comic still?
I have no idea where it's going. I did some work with TikTok Tom, a couple stories with him, and at the end of the last issue 6, Synthetic is getting pulled into a black hole. And I try to use like real science. Like there are some people that say nothing ever falls into a black hole, and you have virtual particles that are created. One particle goes in, a virtual particle is created and stays out. So I took Synthetic pretty much became the virtual particles. One went in, one went out. So the future of Synthetic is I've got a Synthetic that's in a black hole. He's connected to gravity all across the universe. And so he's got a big plan. I've got the Synthetic that's outside of the black hole. And somehow I want to have the Synthetic in the black hole, manipulating all his events all throughout time. So
interesting.
Oh wow.
And that's where I was trying to tie him in with TikTok Tom. You know, all
That's what I was going to ask. Yes, because when he popped in there and it just helped them out, helped the gang out and stuff. That was
yeah, and
great.
then also the gorilla story when you're
Yes,
talking about
yes.
the collapse of the universe. So yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
And that's what I like about your stories. I'm a huge sci-fi fan, and I watch much when I'm bored to death. If I have a writer's block, I'll watch Neil deGrasse Tyson videos.
Right.
Watch him explain the universe and all that stuff. So I love that type of
Hey,
stuff.
I'll give you a recommendation. I watch a lot of physics lectures on YouTube, and the Royal Institute is a great channel.
Okay.
People get up there and
Oh, perfect. Okay.
a little
Very
off
cool.
topic there, but anyway.
No, researching a comic is like definitely on brand with this. Like doing your homework for your stories is important because that's one thing. I even talk about it like my character takes place in Southeast Asia because that's where I live. So I have all this reference and I take it in and I like walking around and so like everything like that. So every part of it is important. And so the fact that you do so much research for a character like that is amazing. And it's sort of I feel like it's going to give you a better foundation for the character down the road and for the story down the road because you just have an understanding of what you're talking about.
Well, sometimes.
Yeah.
Just try to fool everyone. That's what I do.
Confidence goes a long way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I wrote a story once on time travel and I did a bunch of research on time travel. And basically all of the conclusion I came up with is time travel is weird and almost impossible to wrap your brain around. And I'm still trying to write this story about it. I'm like, but all I know is that it's really hard. And this is like, how is this character going to deal with it if I can't even wrap my brain around it? So
I tried doing that. I was going to do a time travel story with TikTok Tom, and I did research on it. Then I'm going, you know what? Trying to explain this is going to, I'm confused trying to understand.
You got to gloss over it.
And trying to explain.
I mean, nobody wants to read a novel, explaining everything. So you got to kind of just like hit some PowerPoints and move on.
That's it. Yes, simple. But sometimes it's it's like you just want to do a simple way and just forget about laws of physics, laws of nature, everything. Just do a story, and if it works, it works.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
That's one of the neat things about the medium. Like in issue 2, I've got the Rebecca character, and she's got a backpack, and I was like, all right, well, whatever happens, she's always going to have whatever she needs is going to be in that backpack because you can't see it. So, there could be the right key to unlock a door. But I try to
see that.
I try to give myself a way out of situations.
Yeah.
But see, that's what makes it fun. It's like, you know what, I had one person ask me one time, how does TikTok Tom blow things up? I go, he just blows things up.
Exactly.
Never explained it. I don't want to explain it because then if I explain it, then someone will say that's not possible. It's better not to explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just make it, like your Rebecca character, it makes it into a fun character. It's like, you know what? She could pull out anything from that bag.
Exactly.
It's the Mary Poppins bag. Remember in Mary Poppins, she could everything's lamps and everything coming out of her bag.
There you go.
It works. It's a good story. It's a good way to have characters. I think Iggy also in TikTok Tom can sort of pull out a weapon, anything she wants. There's that sort of story. It's a really good system for being able to write yourself out of problems, but also sort of expand what your characters can do. So you're actually erasing.
And you have unlimited possibilities. Yep. So, Emil, a question. Who are your influences? Growing up, now, comic, art, movies, science, anything?
All right. My favorite, we'll start with movies. My favorite movie is Mad Max. And then start.
Now, is this the original or a new one?
Oh, the original. The 1978 and then the 1982 Road Warrior. That was a great one. But you needed the first one to move on to the second.
Yes, second one, yes.
So as far as movies, that's my favorite movie. Artist wise, painters, I like Van Gogh. Comic wise, huge Todd McFarlane fan, huge John Buscema fan, and that's about it. So
That's cool.
I mean, I like art when I see it, but as far as like being able to actually name off a couple.
So let me ask you, John Buscema art, what was your favorite? Like his Silver Surfer run, Avengers,
Conan was.
Conan. I was going to say Conan.
It was just like I couldn't imagine being tasked to draw a Conan issue, but he made it look so easy. And of course, here's a guy sitting there surrounded by women. Everybody's in perfect natural poses. Tons of detail. I mean, it was really mind-blowing stuff.
And Savage Sword of Conan at that time, and again, going back to our original conversation we had, the black and white art, it was amazing.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the few books that was published in, as a kid, when you bought Conan, because, I mean, again, you had the Boris Vallejo covers, and you bought it, that struck you to buy the comics, and you looked inside, and it was, Buscema, and I can't remember some of the other artists, but it had a lot of amazing artists in the book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I definitely see Todd McFarlane in your art. Like, I see that sort of, that feel that, I think he describes it as noodling or that little thing where it's like that lot of little extra bits that really give it life. Like, I can see that in your art quite a bit.
Well, I like that his art was very dynamic, everything's coming at you. I don't know. It's good comic booking. Draw something real big to cover up this weak spot that I don't want to have to deal with. Like on the page I'm working on right now, I'm like, there's going to be a lot of debris covering,
There's always a wall blocking the feet.
Exactly. But you know what? That's good comic booking to me. So.
Yeah.
Okay, Emil, so in your comics, I noticed you have aliens also in the book.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
lots of aliens.
And I like it that you make them traditional Area 51 style aliens.
Well, I have my theories. I figured, like, in the 1940s, we split the atom. And then, we would get cosmic attention for being able to do that. So.
And are they gray? Are they gray aliens or white aliens?
Oh, they're gray aliens.
Oh, okay.
And they're not bad. They're very intelligent. And, I have like this galactic council, and they're part of the galactic council, and they got to, watch over Earth.
So when you're writing,
go ahead.
I was going to say, when you're writing your stuff, do you do you have these ideas and do you take notes and sort of like, oh, we should have a galactic council or things like that? Or is it just literally like, as you're writing the story, you think, oh, I need this, so I'll use this? Or how does that work in your story writing?
Man, I just wing it. I just storyboard it out. I have like the idea of the story I want to tell, and then like the Galactic Council and stuff like that. That's filling in gaps that I need to fill in. It's filler.
So now here's a question: what's your process, start to end? Like, do you write a full script? Do you,
Actually, I can show you what I do, and I've got my storyboards that I did for that first TikTok Tom story I did. But anyway, pretty much what I do, I just start storyboarding. I'll write some little ideas of text, and just go from there.
No, you don't write out a script or story or anything like that?
No, I like actually storyboarding it out. I have like the basic idea of where I want the story to go.
I'm exactly the same way.
Yeah, and then just start drawing out the panels and throwing in little bits of dialogue of what they need to say, and then it all just kind of evolves as it goes along until.
When I first started doing that years ago, I from the very beginning I started doing it that way. Rarely wrote a script, and just went to the pages. And I remember reading one time, which gave me a huge confidence boost. That Jack Kirby would just draw out the first panel, start drawing, and write up the story as he's drawing, and going,
Yeah.
"Hey, okay, it's I'm not the only one."
Well, what I find is if I have my storyboarded page, that's like you were saying, I guess, coming over or getting over like writer's block or artist block or finding motivation. You see it on already there, and you're like, okay, well, I can make this panel a little more dynamic whenever I draw the real page, and so it gives you something to kind of make you want to keep going with it. So,
I'm the opposite of you guys. I'm like, I have a written script. I have an outline of my story. Like for Blue Orchid, I'm right now drawing issue 3. I have the outline issue 16 finished.
Wow!
So I already know where it's going up until issue 16. And then I do scripts for each issue, like every single bit of dialogue. I mean, I can change it. Obviously, editing is part of it. But then I do storyboard type style, and then I get into my comics. Like, so I've already written the story like 2 or 3 times before I even put a pen down.
But
So
my thing is, if I start planning out story that far in advance, and if I write out all the detail, by the time I get to the paper, I hate to say it, and this is where my laziness might come in, I get bored. I think it's just, get the blank sheet of paper, just start sketching, thumbnail, or drawing, and let the ideas flow as you're drawing.
yes, that's the way I work too. I mean, I don't know. It works different for everybody.
yeah.
And Chris, I can't. You only have 3 issues out, and I can't even imagine planning out, 13 more issues.
Yeah, I already know what's going to happen with the character in 13 issues. So it's like,
Wow.
for me, it's a certain amount of comfort for me. Like to me, it's this idea of like, okay, I don't have to think about like I already know where this is going. It's like, it's comfortable. I can like focus on like literally drawing like the buildings in the background or designing the monster or things like that. Like I can focus on that part of the art. I don't have to focus on like the actual story because I already know where it's going to go. And also I tend to get ideas randomly. So like I might come up with a monster for issue 11 because I know that where that story is going to go. And rather than sort of have to be like, okay, I'll hold it back, I can doodle it out because I have an idea of how she's going to fight the monster in issue 11 and things like that. So it's like, to me, there's this sort of certain comfort in the idea. And the thing is, it's not written in stone as well. Like I've definitely, even from issue 1 to 3 that I'm doing right now, it's like I've made little tweaks because I've sort of gone like, okay, in reality, this did work out in the story, so I'm going to tweak it to change it like this. So, but I'm like an editor in my brain. Like that's how my brain works. Is I prefer to edit than to, sort of let it flow. Like to me, having the whole story and then going back and tinkering is where I love to do it. So it's just a different way of thinking. I have done stories straight through, and there is a certain joy in it. But with this story, it's like it's nailed down 100%. So it's a different thought process.
I can respect that. Mine's just, at a whim, whatever I'm feeling. Nothing's really planned out. I have ideas, beginning, middle, and end, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think part of it too is like my training is in animation,
Right.
and so like you're dealing with a script, you're dealing with a director, you're dealing with like, you don't have a choice in those situations. So it's like in animation, you can't sort of wing it most of the time. There's a few guys who do it, but for the most part, if it's not planned, it's gonna fall apart like halfway through. So I think that's just where my brain works. Like all of my comic book writing and all of my comic book drawing is based on animation ideas. So
Right.
I just think it's just how I was trained to do it. So I just continue to do it that way. So,
So, question: you have 6 issues out now. Any plan to collect them?
Yes, actually, I do have a plan to collect them. And when it's going to happen, I don't know. Because I have 2 more issues in my head that I definitely want to do. So, and I figure if I collect them all into one volume, I need to have those other 2 issues ready so they can be included.
yeah.
And where
How long
can
does it take you to do an issue?
Yes.
It takes me forever. I work on it whenever I'm motivated to, and that's why I get up so early. I get up because I'm fresh and can, have ideas, and get it going. At the end of the day, after you get home from work, I have big ideas to work on it, but by the time I get home, and
You're exhausted. Same way. Yeah.
you know,
Now, what takes you the longest, penciling or inking?
penciling. Well, lately I've been trying to, do very minimal pencils. And
I was going to
just,
ask that because your cover you just posted, um, those are really tight pencils.
Yes, the one I'm working on right now, yeah, that's more pencil work than I want to put into it. But with the perspective and everything, there's a lot of stuff I need to have worked out before I hit it with ink. So
Okay, no, sometimes I find that sometimes if I pencil, it like you said, depends on the mood. Sometimes penciling will take me no time to do, and other times you're erasing, trying to, like you said, the perspective, angle, whatever, you want to make it right.
yeah. Well, I want to make it look cool. It might not look right, but I try to make it look cool.
And mentioning that,
I think that's going to be the title of this episode. I want to make it look cool. I think that's going to be the title of this episode. That's perfect.
And mentioning that, I was looking at the book, and wow, I have to give you credit. You draw trucks and cars in your book.
Yeah.
That's my weakness. So, that's why you don't see TikTok Tom driving a car or, anything like that.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the reason why I wanted the story to take place in the future, because I didn't want to draw cars and trucks and,
I read this interview with Jamie Hewlett of Tank Girl, and they asked him why he put Tank Girl in the desert. And he goes, he doesn't like drawing buildings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, there you go. All of us have our things we don't like drawing.
Yeah. I mean, I would, if it called for it, just like that issue with the trucks and the cars. So if it calls for it.
You're a braver man than I.
No.
So looking at your comic, huge sci-fi influence, any sci-fi TV shows or movies that you really like?
Star Trek, I could watch Star Trek all day long. Next Generation, Voyager, the original series. Just love me some Star Trek. Star Wars, and then Stargate SG-1. That's another good one. And that's kind of the feel that I want for Synthetic. It was like every episode was just a little adventure. Everything's on the brink of collapse, and then last 5 minutes, Rebecca pulls out what they need in her backpack. Happy ending for everybody.
But you know what? That's old school storytelling.
Don't give away our stories.
Yeah.
No.
And that's old school storytelling that worked, and it still works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I create is what I would want to buy.
Perfect response.
Yeah.
Because that's all of us.
Yeah. Well, I found with the indie comic creators, everybody loves the medium, and I respect that across the board. So.
And that's why we do it. I mean, I do my comic because you know what? I hate to say it, I want to do fun stories like you and Chris and tell my stories my way. Doesn't matter if one person reads it or 100 people read it. Long as, even not one person appreciates it, I'm happy.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why we do this podcast, is to actually find out that everybody else is doing it the same way that we are. That we're not like these weirdo outsiders. And in fact, I find that indie comic people all think that, like, well, I must do it different than everyone else. And then you sort of talk to each other and you kind of realize, because actually I do it almost like, like we all have a lot more in common than we have different when it comes to this kind of thing. So it's really cool to connect that way. And
well, that's that's kind of humanity across the board is like that, you know. So.
And which is
that's
good.
extremely deep for a comic book podcast.
We weren't expecting that, Emil.
I guess asking him who he thinks would win in a fight, Superman or Hulk, at this point would make it just seem lame.
Oh, Superman. Come on.
And why?
If I was Superman fighting the Hulk, I would snatch up the Hulk, fly him into outer space, and just put him in orbit.
I think that was I think that was the most people's response.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the easy fix. I mean, he can use his laser. He can use his laser.
Yeah, I'm tabulating your thing into our vote now, so you're officially now into our account of who win. We have a score. We're keeping score, so very good.
Oh.
No, our previous videos, every time we went to a show or a store appearance, we've asked people that same question. And it's interesting.
It's a good one. I mean, if Superman couldn't fly, he'd have his hands full. But he can fly. And he can fly to outer space.
Exactly.
So do you read any comics? Like new comics?
No, I haven't read it. I mean, I pick up, the oddball book here and there. But as far as like reading, I haven't read comics since the early 90s.
I think that's like myself and Chris, where first of all, for me, living in Canada, comics are expensive now. Because I mean, in the US, they're what, $5.99 a book?
Yes.
And here it's $7.99. So, and it's for a 22-page book, that's not worth it, honestly.
I agree. What threw me off the buying comics in the the early 90s, it was like, you had probably 5 different Spider-Man titles. They had a big like storyline going through, and you had to buy all 5 of those
all of them
titles
to understand, yes.
Yeah, and then I was like, I don't want to buy just Spider-Man. I want to read something else too. But to get this story, my comic book budget for this week is all got to be Spider-Man. And then I was like, don't give me gimmicks.
It's like watching an Avengers movie now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like you have to have Disney Plus just to understand the latest Avengers movie. And it's like, I don't know, I have Netflix. I don't want to get Disney Plus and watch like 15 hours of TV just so I can understand the movie that I'm going into. I want to sit down and just enjoy it.
Well, if they do it right, you should be able to just go into the movie and sit down and be
That's it, yes. And that's the thing with comics. So we got into a talk about X-Men, Chris Claremont. You can't jump into a Chris Claremont X-Men book and understand it. You had to be a reader for years and years to even get a decent understanding of what the storyline's about.
Right.
Yeah. So we should probably wrap this up. Where can they find your book? That's the main question.
That's an actual big question. You can download the first 4 issues of Sinthetic from Amazon. I've got it. The first 4 issues is collected there. That's a full complete art. 6 and 7, you can contact me, atomicgraphics@gmail.com.
We'll put a link in at the bottom.
Okay.
Yep.
And you can contact me and I can get you printed copies.
And if people want to get hold of you, you're on, where are you at? Instagram? Where are you at?
I am on Instagram, @Atomic, and I'm on Facebook. Actually, Sinthetic has a Facebook page, so they can go there. And that's about it. I really don't use a lot of social media. I used to use Twitter a lot, but I haven't been. So.
And obviously, if the show's in your area, so keep an eye out.
Well, I'll have to update as that comes along, because usually I don't find out till the last minute. It's like, hey, is there a spot?
Nice, very cool. So, well, thanks for being on. I mean, we have great respect for your art. We connect. You and I just connected sort of recently in online, and like every time I see your drawings, it's like I sit there. I'm both impressed and angry that they're so good. So
Oh,
it's
well, thank you.
it's really great stuff. And thanks for also talking to us just about this, because again, it's a good time to connect with creative minds and to realize we have a lot more in common than different in this.
And thank you, and I love your work. Let's keep doing creating comics.
Hey, well, thank you, and absolutely, I really enjoyed myself. I appreciate y'all having me on.
Thank you.